on your smart speaker and on BBC Sounds.
On FM, on digital and on your smart speaker, this is indeed BBC Radio 3. It's 5 o'clock.
Hello everyone and welcome to This Classical Life. I'm Jess Gillam, here with you until 6 o'clock today, and we have a show packed with great music and a legendary guest, the one and only Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys. Neil has chosen some of his favourite music, including Hildegard of Bingen, Johann Sebastian Bach and Lotte Lenya singing Kurt Weill. And we've got some Polish folk with prepared piano too. Before all that though, I think it's time for a dance. the bite and energy of Danse Villageoise from Suite Pastorale by Chabrier. Well, my guest on This Classical Life today is Neil Tennant, a singer, songwriter and composer best known as one half of the Pet Shop Boys. He and Chris Lowe are widely regarded as the greatest pop duo of all time. I think numbers can help to put things into context sometimes, and here's a stat for you. The Pet Shop Boys have sold over 100 million records. They recently released their 15th studio album, Nonetheless, and today Neil's here to tell us about the music he's loving listening to. He's an altar boy turned pop pioneer, so I think his choices and musical thoughts are going to be pretty interesting. Before we meet Neil Lowe, let's hear something from The Most Incredible Thing, a 2011 Sadler's Wells dance production with music by the Pet Shop Boys. Here's Help Me. Well, Neil Tennant, hello.
Hello. Nice
Welcome to
here.
This Classical Life. I'm looking forward to listening to all of your musical choices and what you're listening to, but I wonder if we could go right back to the beginning of your musical life.
Mm-hmm.
What's your first memory of hearing or playing music?
Well, you know, I was a kid in the 60s, so we had a little monophonic record player. But in those days, record players would play 33 RPM, 45 RPM, and excitingly, 78 RPM, and you had to turn the needle over. And my mother had a collection of 78s. That was my first introduction to classical music and orchestral music. She actually had Polotzian dances from Prince Igor by Borodin. I loved this. I liked this as much as a pop record, and I used to play it a lot. And then at school, my primary school, which was quite a groovy new 1960s primary school, we used to have a thing where we used to go into the hall and they played music, we had to dance to it and put on this piece of music to dance to. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And was dancing around the hall, and it was The Blue Danube by Johann Strauss. And even now, if I hear it, I'm back in the school hall at St. Oswald's, whirling around the hall.
So have the two always been connected, music and dance, for you?
To an extent. I mean, again, when I was a kid, I grew up in Newcastle. The Royal Ballet used to come to Newcastle. That was a sort of regional home for them. And my mother took us 2 or 3 times to see the Royal Ballet doing Giselle and Swan Lake and what have you. And I announced when I was 9 I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And I got Teach Yourself Ballet out of the local library. And I made my brother Simon, who's 3 years older than me, so he'd have been 6, try to do a sort of class against the radiator in the spare bedroom. But that ambition didn't last very long. But of course, the Pet Shop Boys have written the ballet. And Chris's mother was a professional dancer, so he really represents the dance thing more than me.
And in that time you were working, before the Pet Shop Boys, you were working as an editor and journalist. What was your listening like then? Were you listening to music all the time,
All the
absorbing
time,
stuff?
yes. I shared it with 2 friends from Newcastle. So we were listening to, obsessed with David Bowie in the early 70s. I went to see him 3 times in London on the Life and Saint tour. And we like Roxy music. We all quite like punk, The Clash, and then Kraftwerk's records. But I moved to a flat on the King's Road in Chelsea, and I used to go to Chelsea Record Library. And Chelsea Record Library was my education into classical music. I just worked my way through borrowing the records. And so I sort of gradually formed my classical taste. I also, by the way, used to listen to Radio 3 in the mornings before I came to work.
And what was the music that caught your ear? Was there anything in common with it all? Is it far and wide?
The linking thing, I don't know. Beauty, excitement. There was something in classical music I didn't really get out of pop music. Although we studied music at school, and I played the cello at school, not very well. I read about music a lot. In the 80s, I remember there's a book about Shostakovich came out, and I became really, really interested in Shostakovich. But it's the sort of deep feeling of it. I like complicated chords. Well, like West End Girls, our first hits, actually got quite complicated chords. And that's something I like in music, dense harmony.
Well, let's get on with some of the listening today, Neil. The first choice today is yours. Let's hear a little bit of it now. And you were talking about deep feeling. This is quite a place to start.
This isn't dense harmonies, but it's very, very deep feeling. I have enough, ik heb genoeg. Actually, the reason I've chosen all of these tracks, I looked at my Spotify most played tracks from last year, and it's mostly classical music, by the way, and this was on there. I think Bach did a few versions of it. It's so beautiful and sort of resigned. I have quite a high voice, and when I used to do singing lessons in the 80s, my singing teacher told me I shouldn't do this pop music because you can't hear your voice because of the beat. You should sing Baroque opera. And there's an alternative universe where I am singing this.
And this was written for Candlemas. But it's interesting that music from, the 1700s, the feelings, that the mass, whoever was there listening whenever this was performed, it has the same effect now. We're in 2024.
It also sounds very modern. It's lines interweaving with each other. It somewhat has a relationship with electronic music. Like Kraftwerk is all lines interacting with each other. We have taken chord changes from Vivaldi, who has great chord changes, and Purcell, who were, broadly speaking, the same era as this. And again, they sound terribly modern, I think. The sort of dialogue of the voice, and it's an oboe, isn't it? It's really incredible.
it's all related music. Like, you can find the similarities between it, like this, the counterpoint, and then something like Crawford that you're saying. It's all the same material, and there's so much then you can do with it.
Yeah.
And where does this take you as you listen?
It takes me to a clean place. I was reluctant to use the word spiritual, because I'm not a believer, as people say. But nonetheless, it does. It takes you out of yourself. But also, I just marvel at the music. There's nothing whatsoever contrived about it.
Well, let's leave Bach behind and we move into my first choice of the day. It's Otis Redding with Try a Little Tenderness.
Amazing start to this.
Isn't it? It's like a horn chorus.
Oh, she may be weary. Them young girls, they do get wearied wearing that same old shaggy dress. Yeah.
What's great about this is it's a cover version, and the famous hit version by Frank Sinatra, which is a very smooth ballad. There's nothing smooth about this.
Try a little tenderness. Yeah.
Otis Redding, he's turned it into his statement. And when you do a cover version, I think that's what you should do.
You know she's waiting, just anticipating for things that she'll never possess. Yeah.
And apparently he really didn't want to record it. He was under quite a lot of pressure from the label and from friends that were saying, this song, it'd suit you so much. He's taken the mickey, really, on the recording. He thought they wouldn't release it if he recorded it with such a pleading thing in his voice.
Really?
Yeah.
But it sounds sincere.
It doesn't it? I mean, it became such a hit from him. He'd do 15, 20-minute live versions.
And also the band really turned into a soul record.
And Isaac Hayes did the arrangement.
Did he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Booker T and the MGs, the sax band. But if you take them away and just had the vocals, it's not the same. I think if I could visit a place, I'd either go to Motown or Stax, like just to sit in on those sessions.
Oh, I'd love to
and
go
see
to.
it.
I'd love to go to Motown.
It makes it easier to bear. Yeah. You won't regret it, no. Young girls, they don't forget it. Love is their home, happiness. Yeah.
And you mentioned doing the cover version and sort of making it a totally different thing. But what about the other way around? If someone's covering your song, how do you feel about that?
I like it. What I don't like is when they just do our version of it. We get a lot of covers of It's a Sin. But what I like is when we get, there are quite a lot of on YouTube, sort of heavy metal covers. It practically is a heavy metal record. And so I like it when they take it totally to heavy metal and away from us.
Well, Neil, let's move to your next choice of the day. It's Miles Davis. Tell us what you've chosen now.
I've chosen Générique. This is from Miles Davis's soundtrack to the French film in English, Ascent to the Scaffold. In 1979, I was with my then girlfriend in Paris. We would often just flick through old second-hand record shops, and I bought this soundtrack, I think because I liked the cover, and I've been playing it ever since. It's one of my favourite pieces of music ever written. It's so economical. My beef against jazz, if I have one, is, as someone once said about Mozart, too many notes. There's not too many notes in this. It's very spare.
And the timing.
The timing, I can't even get my head around, really. So I don't even think about it. I just accept it like the weather. I just accept it. To me, this is jazz. It's the city at night. It's a lonely man in this instance. Maybe it's even raining. He's wearing a raincoat. He's lonely. And his soul is singing this. Apparently, he went into the studio to do this film soundtrack. They did it in 4 hours, and then someone chopped it all up. Isn't that incredible?
And I think he'd only decided he was going to do it a few weeks before.
Yeah.
He was on tour and had a piano in his hotel room, wrote the ideas, and played
that's
it.
right. And they had a few drinks beforehand, I think.
I mean, you listen to it. I mean, he's an absolute icon. This is like the precursor to So What and the whole of Kind of Blue. For me, it's his voice.
You're always aware of Miles Davis's voice. Particularly the 50s, 60s, until Bitches Brew. When he starts, there is few kinds of music I dislike more than rock jazz fusion. And the first rock concert I ever saw was rock jazz fusion. And actually, I still enjoyed the concert, but I thought this music is not for me. But now he has a completely individual trademark sound. He's one of my go-to musicians.
Well, the next choice today is mine, and you've already said you're a huge Shostakovich fan, Neil, so I'm happy. This is the second movement from his Symphony No. 5.
It's interesting you chose the second movement. Why did you choose that?
For me, it totally sums up that sardonic wit he has. It's the two things at once that he can do like no one else.
Sardonic is the word. These sardonic little melodies. It's cheerful, but it's dark. It's quite something to pull off. Dark, cheerful, you know. What really also interests me about Shostakovich is the politics reflected in the music. He couldn't even perform his Fourth Symphony. The purges were starting in Russia under Stalin, and so he wrote this, and they put a sort of dedication on it to Soviet artists' response to just criticism.
It has that feeling, doesn't it, of the forced smile, just about to burst into tears.
Yeah.
And there's always the grit, whether it's in the harmony or the rhythm or something not quite settling, there's always a feeling of, okay, yeah, but what's around the corner?
It's as though he's taking the received opinion and placing it in the context of truth somehow. In totalitarian regimes, there's a lot of performance going on. If you think of North Korea, they do those amazing performances. In Stalin, a lot of performance going on. In this music, it feels like you have the cheerful performance, but under it is the context, is the reality.
And he wrote for theatres, dance, circus, ballet, and in this movement you can hear that. It's like
Yes.
you're
He
looking
wrote-
at the
He wrote
characters.
the occasional pop song.
It feels like a spoof, this movement.
It
Is what
does.
It feels like.
It's
one
got
of those
a,
things, you
a
know.
relationship with comedy.
Is that music that was on at home on those records that your mum had? Or is that something you came to?
No, I came to it by, like a lot of music, come to it by reading about it.
So you read first and then hear it?
Yeah. I remember in pop music, you used to buy the Music Press by the NME
Yeah.
every week, maybe the Melody Maker, and then I worked for Smash Hits. You would read about music, and then you go out and buy it. And then I extended that culture in a way to classical music. I would become interested in someone, then I would read about them, and that would make me listen to the music more. I mean, Shostakovich's life is fascinating, the era he lives through.
That was the second movement from Shostakovich's Symphony No. 5, performed there by the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra and Vasily Petrenko. You're listening to This Classical Life here on BBC Radio 3, and I hope you're enjoying the music recommendations on the programme so far today. All the details are on BBC Sounds if you'd like to listen to the pieces in full. My guest on the show today is Neil Tennant, and coming up we have music by Kurt Weill, Saint-Saëns and Prokofiev. But before that, let's hear some more of Neil's music. We asked Neil to choose something from his back catalogue, and he could have chosen from any number of hits, but here's something that might be a little bit unexpected. It's the one and only Shirley Bassey singing The Performance of My Life by Chris Lowe and Neil Tennant.
A brave face, stiff upper lip will do the trick. Look, the mask is firm, the face is mine. It seems fine until the final day. I'll play this part the only way I can. For to live, I have to give. the performance of my life. What's the truth? Well, I won't bore you with the truth. I knew it would be tough right from day one, but you go on until the final day. I'll play this part the only way I can, for to live I have to give the performance of my life. Made it to the top, although the road was steep, and there I had a dream, a vision of love revealed in sleep. Right on cue, I fell in love with you. You caused many a tear, but I had applause, I had a career, until the final day. I played this part the only way I can, for to live I have to give the performance of my life.
Chris and I saw her perform that at the Roundhouse. It's one of my proudest moments. I wish my mother was alive to hear it. We wrote the song. We'd already written it. And this guy, David Arnold, who does the James Bond themes, phoned us up and said, would you like to write a song for Shirley? And I said, oh, we've got it. I'll send it to you. Because we'd written the song Performance of My Life. And it was inspired by working with performers like Justin Springfield and Liza Minnelli. And I'm fascinated by the way the life is the performance and the performance is the life. And the two things are inextricably linked. Our version of it was sort of synth poppy, and Shirley sang it. And it becomes this quite operatic sort of aria, really. She said, she cried when she sang. She said, I don't need to write my autobiography anymore. And of course, her performance of it. And actually, David's beautiful arrangement all leads to that end bit, which is the closest we'll ever get to Richard Strauss.
And what about your kind of songwriting process? Are you always listening for ideas and kind of listening to the world and storing them as you go, or is it always collaborative? How does it work?
Well, there's various ways of working. Sometimes we work together in the same room, but that's our traditional way of working. In recent years, because of the lockdown, we were in different houses, and so we were sending each other things. And Chris would send me music, or I would send him lyrics. And then I started... Chris got me to start programming on GarageBand on the computer, which I'd never done programming. I always thought that's not my job. And anyway, I had to do it. It also meant I could record my vocals and stuff and send it to Chris. But there's loads of songs that we haven't put out because they're not really very Pet Shop Boysy.
So how does it feel to have songs kind of that you know are there, but no one will maybe hear?
Well, I don't know. Maybe David Arnold will phone up again.
There we go.
We often have songs lying around, and I never forget a song that we've got a song that Chris and I wrote in 1983. It's called In the Club or in the Queue. The demo was recorded live in the studio with me playing the piano and Chris playing the keyboard. And we've got some funny electronic sound, like traffic passing by on it. And we've never been able to recreate it. But one day, In the Club or in the Queue will make its appearance.
Well, let's get back to our listening today, Neil Tennant. The next choice is yours, and it's Hildegard von Bingen. Tell us about this choice.
Well, if you return to my Spotify most played list for 2023, at number 1, to my own astonishment, is Hildegard. This incredible, pure vocal sound. Now, Hildegard von Bingen, of course, astonishingly, is about 500 years before J.S. Bach. Isn't that incredible?
1100, you know?
I mean, she was a genius. She's also really important in natural history, apparently. She's also now a saint. It feels to me like she's the most important woman that ever existed, really. I don't really know what I'm listening to. There's no harmony. For someone who likes dense harmony. Again, if we return to the concept of spirituality, which I'm sceptical of sometimes, this echoing around my house is, I don't know, you find peace. There's no two ways about it. I find it quite difficult to talk about, really. I just often have it playing.
Is it the sense of other? I think, like for me, when I listen to this, I'm sort of placed in that space. So I'm imagining the cathedral, wherever it's recorded, the sort of physical space. But it's definitely a feeling of somewhere I'm not always when I listen to her
Yes,
music.
it's like a big open space. And it has this essential humility about it. You're not listening to a big ego. And that I find very inspiring. Because we live in such an egocentric world across the board. And then you listen to this, and there's no ego there. No ego at all.
And listening to this, it kind of makes me think about your first experiences of singing. When did you discover you had a voice, a singing voice?
Well, I never thought I did, really. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to write songs. When Chris and I met, we started writing songs together. I was obviously singing them because he wasn't going to sing. And so I just became the singer by default. Even now, I don't really think of myself as a singer. I started to have singing lessons when we signed to a record label. She taught me how to sing properly. I like to double track it. I really turn into me when I double track it. And it gives a sort of shiny quality. This, what we're listening to now, is a vocal sound I love. There's something about this I'm even seeking in my own vocals, if you heard them a cappella. We've always loved that sort of pure soprano sound. On the musical and sampling instrument, the emulator, which came out in the early 80s, you used to get discs of sounds. And there was a disc called Voices One, and it produced this sort of sound. And all the way through the Pet Shop Boys' career, There's a moment where this high boy or female soprano voice comes up playing a little radiant line above everything else. It cuts through everything. It's on loads of our records.
Well, let's move back to the symphonic world. This is Prokofiev with his Violin Concerto No. 2 in G minor, and it's the second movement again. The melody's beautiful, but for me, the movement is in that opening. It's like he's made an organ or a synth or something out of the orchestra.
It is like that. It's like a keyboard arpeggio. Yeah.
It's plucked strings and clarinet, so it's got like that wind sort
together.
of colour. Yeah. And then this melody.
Oh, it's glorious.
And the violin, it's like it's almost walking around the orchestra, setting off these
I was
different
about
things.
to say, you could imagine this being a ballet, really. There's something about the melody suggests the rhythm of dance to me. Turning and turning.
It's often described as one of the most beautiful movements that he's written and some of the most beautiful music. But for me, there is a feeling of being completely unsettled.
I find most of his music unsettling. It's always quite useful sounding, I think. It's got a spring in its step, always.
It's quite matter of fact, all the turning of corners to new ideas and new motifs. They kind of just happen quite suddenly. And it's a sort of jolt, but not because the melody's so luscious. It's a strange sort of feeling as a listener, I think. He knows exactly what instrument to use for what line.
Yeah.
If the colours are so clean.
Yeah, it's clean, that's right. So even though it's quite emotional, but it's reserved at the same time.
There's a level of restraint.
There is a level of restraint. I think I always admire that, because it somehow weirdly increases the emotion. It's smiling through the tears, you know.
Do you find it easy to do? Hold back?
Well, my voice naturally, you know, holds back anyway. No matter what I sing, people say it sounds sort of reserved or ironic, even though I'm not being ironic most of the time. I remember when we did the song Go West by the Village People, I didn't want to do it, and Chris said, no, You like it because it's the same chord change as Pachelbel's canon. And also he said, the Village People version sounds so happy, but with you singing it, it'll sound sad anyway. And it, you know what? It does.
Oh, it's a long, long while from May till December.
Well, Neil, it's time for your final choice of the day.
We're back in Chelsea Record Library. I've discovered Lottie Lenya's album of Kurt Weill's Broadway theatre songs. This is a wonderful song about growing old, about the autumn of your life.
Autumn weather turns the leaves to flame. One hasn't got time for the waiting game.
She's a strange singer. She's not a perfect singer, but she really delivers the lyric. And that's something singers can forget sometimes in showing off what a wonderful voice they have. Lottie Lenya delivers this unbelievably beautiful lyric. It's one of the great standard pop lyrics of all time, I think.
And these few precious days I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you.
The sentiment of it being September and the days grow short and you reach November is so true when you're 17, July like me. And yet it's not sort of lachrymose. And his music, his melody is gorgeous, and the orchestration is gorgeous too.
But the songs they sing and the
And you mentioned her voice, that kind of constant vibrato or quiver that's just like a whole world of emotion in itself.
It is.
But it's a long, long while from May till December.
Oh, and then those string lines.
It's like it's the end of September and cold winds are blowing in and they're playing through those strings. And is there any more nostalgic instrument than an accordion?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's there to be nostalgic. Nostalgia has arrived in the room when the accordion comes in, particularly played on a music song like this.
For the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November, and these few precious days I'll spend with you.
What a place to finish. Thank you, Neil Tennant, for joining us on
Perfect.
This Classical Life.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure.
It's been great.
I'll spend with you.
Neil Tennant's final choice today, Lottie Lenya singing Kurt Weill's September song. And don't forget, all of the musical details are on BBC Sounds for further listening. This is This Classical Life on BBC Radio 3. I'm Jess Gillam, here with you until 6 o'clock before Opera on 3. A little bit of sunshine never goes amiss on a Saturday, so let's hear some in musical form. Here's Bertrand Chamayou and the National Orchestra of France with the Second Piano Concerto by Camille Saint-Saëns. music written at the request of the great Russian pianist and composer Anton Rubinstein. He didn't give Saint-Saëns much time to write the second piano concerto, just 3 weeks, but I hope it's put a spring in your step this Saturday night, and thank you very much for tuning into the show. It's been a pleasure to have your company. I'll be back next week with another guest, but to leave you, here's a track by Lautari, a band who play avant-garde arrangements of Polish folk music. Within their unique approach, they strive to retain all the special qualities of folk music: usefulness, a ritual and magical character, and a desire to become individual whilst maintaining contemporary artistic expression. Have a brilliant week. For now, this is Lautari.
This Classical Life was presented by Jess Gillum and produced by Hannah Thorne. And next week, Jess will be chatting to the trumpeter, Matilda Lloyd.
Music Matters on BBC Radio 3.
I'm Clemency Burton-Hill, and in the winter of 2008, I was invited to be a member of the West Eastern Divan Orchestra, the brainchild of Edward Said and Daniel Barenboim.
This is the miracle of music and what music means.
Where Arab and Israeli young people come together to make music. In this series, we're going to trace the story of the divan, from its roots right up to the present day.
25 years of the West Eastern Divan Orchestra. Listen to the series so far on BBC Sounds.
And a very warm welcome from me, Al Ryan. If you just joined us here on BBC Radio 3, it's 6 o'clock and time now to join listeners worldwide for the last of this season's relays from the Metropolitan Opera in New York City for Gluck's sublime take on the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. The countertenor Anthony Roth Constanzo stars as the bereaved musician, opposite the soprano Ying Fong as his cherished bride. The soprano Elena Villalon makes her network broadcast debut as Amore, the god of love, and maestro J. David Jackson conducts the magnificent Met Chorus and Orchestra. But first, this evening's relay begins with a very special tribute.
Round, rich, dark.
That's the kind of sound Donald Palumbo has instilled in his world-famous Met Chorus during nearly 2 decades as chorus master. Palumbo learned it from his mentor, La Scala chorus master Roberto Banaglio.
That Italian opera sound that you used to hear on those old Angel recordings from the 50s and 60s. The color was so expressive, and fortes were powerful, but not edgy. And the pianissimi were rich. I had that in my ear from when I decided I wanted to be a chorus master. When I first got here, I just felt awkward not being at every performance. I needed them to see that every sound they made was important and that I was listening. Each of these past few years, there's consistent, continual improvement in the sound. I remember we came back from COVID. We did a Verdi Requiem, and there wasn't a dip. If anything, people have been craving to sing for so long. That sound was like a huge notch above where we had left it. The sense of ensemble, the sense of unity in making attacks. It's very difficult for a chorus to go from silence to singing a fortissimo pick-up 16th note, and yet this chorus can do it. I couldn't be prouder of how